If you're a pop culture junkie who loves TV, film, music, comedy, and other really important stuff, then you've come to the right place. Get ready and settle in for Classic Conversations, the best pop culture interviews in the world. That's right, we circled the globe so you don't have to. If you're ready to be the king of the water cooler, then you're ready for Classic Conversations with your host, Jeff Dwoskin.
All right, Sally, thank you so much for that amazing introduction. You get the show going each and every week, and this week was no exception. Welcome, everybody, to episode 334 of Classic Conversations. As always, I am your host, Jeff Dwoskin. Great to have you back for another amazing episode of Classic Conversations. My guest today is none other than humor writer, editor, and author Mike Sachs. Mike has written for Vanity Fair, The New Yorker, GQ, Mad Magazine. He's also published several amazing books, including novelizations of non-existent movies. We're going to go deep into that. So much fun. It's coming up in just a few seconds. And in these few seconds, we went back to Simi Valley last week. Dean Butler was here to talk about his book, Prairie Man. We talked Little House on the Prairie, 50th anniversary. Do not miss that if you're a fan of the show. Dean Butler was amazing. But you know what else is amazing? Mike Sachs, a true master of comedic writing. Thrilled to have him on the show. You are going to love this conversation. Enjoy. All right, everyone, I'm excited to introduce my next guest, author, humor writer, editor, Vanity Fair, contributor to New Yorker, GQ, Maxim, Mad, Funny or Die, and a million other places. Welcome to the show, the hilarious Mike Sachs. Hey.
Thank you. I have to change my bio because half of those places no longer exist.
But they still live in our hearts.
They do, but they don't pay.
Well, they're currently paying Mike include.
There we go. Make it current, my man.
I don't track your finances, so if you want me to redo it, I
No, it's fine. It's just I've been in the game so long, and so many places are like Mad Magazine no longer there. I just need to freshen it up a bit, I think.
I know, but Mad Magazine is a special place in my heart. So when I see that, it's more just the coolness that you worked for them. It's not.
Yeah. Well, I just had a few articles. I mean, they were a dream come true for me. Now, before Mad, I was contributing to Cracked, the 90s version, which was the hard copy version. Cracked was sort of a cheap knockoff on Mad, but that was my first writing gig at college and right after college. I was actually talking to Dan Clowes once, and he said that was his first gig, too. He used to do a lot of work for them. So they were really nice about taking people who didn't really have a long resume.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask you. So college, you were a newbie yourself. So they were very welcoming to new folks and helping get them off the ground?
Yeah. I mean, they read my pitches, which is more than I can say. I mean, there weren't many places at that time when I was in college. It was Playboy, New Yorker, National Lampoon, Cracked, and Mad. And that was it. I mean, Onion was just starting to come up, but they weren't taking outside submissions. So I remember submitting to some of these places, including Cracked and Mad, with a self-addressed stamped envelope. You know, I would send in hard copy and include an envelope in case it was rejected, which it typically was, take it to the post office and mail it off. That's how long ago it was.
How often did you get responses versus just getting ignored or having them sent back?
You mean like handwritten rejections, that sort of thing? It wasn't that, I received a handful of handwritten rejections when I was in college and just out of college. And that really actually meant a lot at the time. Typically, it was just a form letter that I'm assuming now an editorial assistant sent. But occasionally, an editor would write back. There was an editor at Vanity Fair who wrote me. Spy Magazine wrote back. Mad Magazine at first, rejected me, but they wrote back. So that was really important to me because it showed that at least they were being read and at least the human was on the other end and they would know who I was next time I contributed. There's some sort of encouragement.
Did you re-bump into any of those people on your way up?
More like on my way down. No. Actually, I kept in touch with quite a few of them. I mean, I never forgot what they did. And that's why when young writers will reach out to me. Even if I can't help them, I'll try to be somewhat positive and show them which way to go and show them what to do and show them what not to do, because they just don't teach us in school. The professors really don't know from it necessarily. Just because you're a tenured professor who teaches, say, MFAs, doesn't mean you're out there hustling, trying to get published in magazines and newspapers. So there's a lot of things that I did, a lot of things that young writers do that I would not recommend. And I sort of try to steer them in the right direction.
What's one thing you recommend not doing?
Don't copyright your work. It's not going to be stolen. And if you put a C within a circle on the page, that means that you really don't know what you're doing. And also it means that you could be a bit paranoid. And editors don't want to deal with that. They want to deal with easy people. And that's one of the things I tell young writers, just be easy to deal with. There's a lot of talent out there. And it really comes down to editors just wanting to, they have a tremendous amount on their plate. They don't want to have to hold your hand or deal with someone who's a little difficult. So just be nice. Don't be an asshole, really. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who are really talented, but they're not easy to work with. And they're not going to get a second chance at doing, I don't care how good you are, you're not going to get an email or a call from these editors again.
All right, so don't copyright your work. That throws up a red flag. Difficult. What's something that you should absolutely do?
I would keep your pitch letters, now pitch emails, very short. I would not oversell. If they're interested, they'll get in touch with you. And I would not necessarily, this is not recommended, but if you're pitching a magazine, if you receive one rejection, that doesn't mean the entire magazine rejects you. I recommend going to editorial editors lower on the ladder. Those who have been in the game a while have their own group of writers, and editor-in-chief doesn't even look at submissions. So go with those who are younger. I think that's usually the best bet. A good way to do it is if you look at books of writers you like and whose writing might be similar to yours, look in the acknowledgement section. Typically, they'll thank their editors, magazine editors, or agents. That's a good place to go to sort of suss out who is editing their work and where you can then go to submit.
Great advice of what to do and what not to do. Nice tips. Thank you, Mike. Oh, hey, when I was researching you, your dad was an endodontist?
Yes.
My dad was a dentist, but I mean, that means we both kind of had our dads in our mouths, I guess, basically.
Right. Good thing I wasn't a proctologist. My dad was a root canal specialist in Virginia, Alexandria, Virginia. He passed away 3 years ago, but we were very, very close. And I used to work in his office occasionally over summers before I was too young to work retail. I started working in a record store at 15. But I would work with him in the summers. I was in charge of a few things, developing the x-rays. We actually had to develop the x-rays back then, and it wasn't digital. And I was also in charge of mixing the gutta percha, which is a type of rubber used in root canals. He was a root canal specialist. It was really a fascinating job in a lot of ways. I learned a lot from him. He put everyone at ease. People would come in very, very nervous, and they would leave just in love with him because he got rid of their pain and was very kind about it. That was a great experience. And being DC, he worked on a lot of politicians like Trenton Lott and also Washington Redskins players, Sonny Jurgensen, and astronauts. So it was fun. I got to meet all these people.
Oh, that's really cool. My dad was known. Everyone would always be like, "Your dad is the funniest," but at home, my mom was funny. My dad wasn't. But everyone, your dad is the funniest dentist. And I was like, all right.
That is, because my dad was very funny and he had a lot of funny dentist friends. In fact, there used to be a dental comedy contest in Northern Virginia where these group of funny dentists would go up and tell jokes. I don't know what it is about dentists and being funny. I think you have to have sort of a positive attitude anyway, because you're dealing with people all day who don't want to be there. And I think a lot of times humor sort of makes it easy for the patient in the chair, which was an early lesson of mine that he would use. But he couldn't use, had to be a very specific type of comedy. It was very vanilla, very Borscht Belt. You can't go dark with the dental joke.
Right. Very dad joke level type stuff.
Very dad joke level.
Well, it's funny you mentioned like all the famous politicians. My dad said once he did an emergency thing on Ray Parker Jr., Ghostbusters.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I used that in a reach out to try and get him on my podcast. Did not get him. But I was like, hey, and I think one of the things I want to tell you, I want to confirm this story. My dad claims he came to my dad, but you try and get any angle you can get with stuff. So
I'm surprised he would be so reclusive, unless he doesn't want to talk about being sued and losing for the Ghostbusters song.
yeah, I know. I just maybe when I say him, I how it is. You reach out, it's people. They're people, but he may not know I exist. But yeah, I wanted to talk to him about that. So anyway, I saw that, so I thought that was an interesting thing we shared. Mike, how did you what was the point where you knew you wanted to do comedy? Was it originally you wanted to be a writer, or is that just how you kind of evolved?
Well, originally I wanted to be a pilot and then a brain surgeon, but I was a very, very poor student and then a pediatric specialist of some kind. But I was not good at science and I was okay at writing, but I really did love comedy. And my dream was to write for Letterman or Saturday Night Live. That was my dream, but I didn't know how to go about it. I didn't know any writers. I mean, I didn't know anyone who knew any writers. So I just started writing for print. That was all I could do, with the hope that one day I would be called up to the majors. I'd be discovered and called up to Letterman or SNL. And that's just not the way it works. But I sort of found my niche because I do really like to write for the page, whether it's for magazines or books or, even audio projects where I don't have to go through creativity by committee. And I don't have to deal with producers. I can really, for better or worse, just get out whatever I need to get out on my own. So it was really just sort of falling into it. I mean, I received some praise in college, and that was the only praise I received in anything. And I just didn't know what else to do. And it took a while. I mean, after college, I worked retail for a number of years and just tried to squeeze my way in somehow. It was just a very mysterious world, difficult world to get into. And just through luck, really, that just kind of came together. But it was not God-given, I can assure you. I could very well easily still be back in Northern Virginia or Maryland working retail.
Hey, well, those record shops are really popular again. So
yeah, well, not as popular as they used to be. I mean, when I worked for this place called Kent Mill Records, it was in the DC area, and they had 33 locations. I mean, it was big. And then they expanded just before Napster took over, and they went out of business. But anyone who grew up in DC in the 80s and 90s would know Kent Mill music.
We had Harmony House here in Michigan. So there's always one really cool music destination.
Is that where Jack White and Eminem used to shop?
I'll have to Google that and find out. Maybe. I know Jack White's got a thing downtown in Detroit now. They press records and stuff, but I didn't remember it till you just mentioned it. But I'll have to look it up. Harmony House was just like the place you went and just had everything. And you living through the evolution of, oh, look, here's the CD section, right? And there's 10 CDs because that's
right.
Right.
I mean, I was there when I first started. It was just when CDs were coming out. So it was mostly vinyl. And it was interesting, sort of an out-of-the-way location. Regulars would show up, just talk. I mean, you just don't see that anymore. And I was 15 working these nights and weekends, and I just loved it. I mean, it got me out into the world, and I saw all these different types of characters. I think it's really actually a good experience for any writer to just have retail or just shit jobs that they have behind them just for experience to write, especially when it comes to comedy.
Nothing beats real world experience, that's for sure.
Well, no. And I think a lot of comedy writers don't have enough of that necessarily. They may know every joke in The Simpsons, but they may not, they don't have military experience like the comic writers did in the 50s coming out of World War II, like Mel Brooks and Larry Gelbart. I think that's really helpful.
No, I agree. The more actual context you can put to things, it can only get better. After the record store, what, Washington Post? Is that where your journey went?
Well, no, I worked as a temp. And then I got a job at a very DC type organization. They have a million associations. This one was called the Investor Responsibility Research Center. We analyze proxy report for large institutional investors. I'm putting myself to sleep just talking about this, but I was editing one of the newsletters. I mean, it's just very typical DC. When, there's a million editing jobs. Every association on earth has a newsletter. Now it would be a website. But I was hired to do that. And from there, I worked at Knight Ridder, which was a wire service, and then temped at the Washington Post and snuck in to the employment office there and applied for a job, which you weren't supposed to do. I mean, at that time, I was just a temp typing in death notices and advertisements. Someone would call and I would type in the advertisement through luck, I just got this job. And it just came down to the fact that I knew this ancient word processing program called Xywrite. And that was an old editing processing program I just happened to know. And from there, I got a job helping to edit the syndicated columnists like George Will and Tom Shales, Jane Bryant Quinn, Ellen Goodman, Charles Krautheimer, and all that. So that was about a year and a half. And then from there, I got the job at Vanity Fair and moved up to New York.
When did you start publishing your own books?
That's only been within like the past 5 years or so. I had gone through traditional publishing, but came up against a wall of sorts because agents and publishers were not really looking for the type of comedy that I wanted to do, which is, understandable as they're not huge sellers. These books are very quirky and a little bizarre. I guess it's almost like Adult Swim would be for TV. I learned and found out that you can really put out anything you want now, publishing wise. I mean, this is the first time in history, really, you can do so at this level. And my wife is a book designer at Random House, and I'm a writer and editor. So I could edit it and write it and put it out. I didn't have to pitch it to anyone. I didn't have to wait 3 years for it to come out. So I always wanted to put out this book. The idea was it would be a novelization or a movie tie-in to a non-existent movie. And in about 4 years ago, I wrote it. It takes place in the late 70s. It's a trucking and CB type movie like Smokey and the Bandit. So I wrote this novelization to a non-existent film, not really thinking about anything, just beyond wanting to get it out. A couple of weeks after it was out, I received an email from someone, Eric Martin, who was a producer, audio producer, and narrator. And he said, "Can I have the rights to this to try to sell it?" And I said, "Sure," not thinking anything would happen. And 2 weeks after that, all these people were on board. Jon Hamm, Ray Seahorn, Andy Richter, just an amazing cast. Philip Baker Hall from Boogie Nights. It was really the first of those, I think, books that were just starting to come out. And then people wanted to be, actors wanted to be associated with these audio comedies, so it was just a timing sort of thing. I had no idea beforehand that it would work out like that. That goes to another lesson. Good things tend to happen if you put it out there instead of just pitching it for years and years. And a good thing happened with this only because I just took the time to write it rather than trying to get it represented by an agent or purchased by a mainstream book publisher.
So you found a great way to sort of circumvent their opinions of your opinions and to get yours out there so that the public can decide, really, which is the ultimate.
I think it's vital to do that. I mean, either it'll be liked or it won't be, but for someone to not put it out because they don't understand it, I think I think writers should avoid that. And especially nowadays where you can do whatever you want, however you want, and have the power to get it out there. I think it's important to get it out there. People tend to be more receptive to something tangible rather than an idea. So if they can hold a book in their hands, or if they can listen to an audio project, or whatever it is you're doing, they can then see what you were talking about. From that point, the tangible aspect, you can then branch out. You can go into various areas. I know writers who've been pitching the same idea for years and years, and I think that's sort of circling the drain. And I think it's a trap in a way. I don't know that anyone needs to it should be the gatekeeper these days. If you put out something that's good, it'll be discovered, but I don't think someone should say that it shouldn't be out there. And I think you have to be, as a writer, somewhat stubborn and just make it happen.
The book we're talking about that Jon Hamm did the audiobook for, Stinker Lets Loose. I love all the ideas of your novelizations and your passion for these discovered novelizations. I mean, Stinker Lets Loose is a hilarious concept of a movie that in your world or in this world existed, but didn't. And here we have you discover the novelization written by somebody else, James Taylor Johnston, but then you're going to republish it on his behalf so that the world can rediscover this lost classic.
Right. Classic in quotes here. I mean, the fun thing about this was I could almost write it as a character, like a character actor would play a role. I could write it as a writer struggling in Hollywood in the late 70s. The margin of error for it being bad is built in. So you don't have to write it like you would something for New Yorker. It can be bad. It can be poorly written. It can have spelling mistakes and grammatical mistakes. But there was a real freedom that I'd never done that before, writing under the guise of a character. It was just fun to do. It was very freeing.
How did you kind of come up with this? Were you a big fan of those type of movies and you just decided to try and adapt your own Smoking the Bandit crazy chimp movie from that era?
Well, I wanted to do, if I had my way, I would have done it as a movie or TV show, but I didn't have that power. So all I had really to create a movie was I thought the easiest way would be to do it in print form, which would be a novelization, which I used to grow up reading. And by doing that, you can sort of create a backstory plot for the movie as well as backstory about the movie. And I just thought it was a fun world to get into. But I had no idea anyone would be interested in putting out an audio. But I'm just thankful they were, because then it became a fake audio to a fake movie. The layers go back and back and back. So it just became an even deeper world once it became an audio project.
Sorry to interrupt. Have to take a quick break. I do want to thank all of you for your support of the sponsors. When you support the sponsors, you're supporting us here at Classic Conversations, and that's how we keep the lights on. And now back to my conversation with Mike Sachs, going deeper into that audiobook. And we're back. How did that kind of make you feel, seeing it come alive like that with Jon Hamm playing your character and all these great folks playing the characters that you developed, and then seeing it come alive like that?
Yeah, it was a dream come true. This is what I wanted to do as a kid. And the fact that someone as great as Jon Hamm would be interested. I mean, he was interested. I had known him a little bit. He posed for an author photo of mine for one of my books. So it's him as the author, not me. Mm-hmm. And his father worked in trucking in Missouri in the 70s. And I think it just sort of hit home with him. But by the time the second book came out with Gillian Jacobs and Bob Odenkirk and Adam Scott and all these people, it was just crazy. I just couldn't believe it. I still can't really believe it. And I could have pitched that idea or any of these ideas for years and it never would have happened. Just the fact that I could show them something, I think really helped.
So Passable and Pink, that's the one you're referring to there. That inspired by, did you have a personal love for we all did, but John Hughes movies?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I loved 16 Candles and Breakfast Club. It's funny. I just tried to watch 16 Candles with my 14-year-old daughter last night, and she was not having it. As soon as she saw the naked shower scene, she was like, And then also the cultural appropriation of Long Duck Dong. I mean, it is not a movie for today's kids. But for me, growing up in the 80s and 90s, early 90s, I love those movies. But I thought a lot could be done to sort of take the piss out of them, to satirize them. I mean, some of the movies are brilliant, Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, but some of them are not brilliant. And I find annoying Pretty in Pink being one, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which I find incredibly annoying. I find Ferris to be an absolute bore and a sociopath. I mean, he's almost like a future GOP senator when you look at his attitude to life. So I wanted to make fun of some of the things that I just sort of missed the first time around.
Got it. And then Slouchers, which that's Gen X parody. Do you have any more coming? Is this like...
I do. I have one coming that is I'm working on now, and it's actually a photo book. And I have an amazing cast of actors and comedians. Jon Hamm's in it again. Paul Rubens is in it. Amy Sedaris is in it. Patton Oswalt, Chris Maloney, Michael Ian Black, Lorraine Newman. So that one is, I don't want to give the idea away, but it's more of instead of a novelization, it's more of a photo book.
Got it. So that must have been fun. So like one of these, I've seen these with Sound of Music has one where it's more of a scrapbook, yes. A scrapbook concept.
Exactly, right? With an essay and a whatever happened to and bloopers and all that sort of thing, which I used to like too. But the premise is based off of a specific type of movie from the mid-90s.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's awesome. Is Slouchers an audiobook now too, or is just Passable and Pink?
Slouchers is audio, but it's not a full cast. It was Eric Martin who did all the other narration for the other books. And he did the narration for that. But that is available in audiobook.
Like a normal audiobook?
Yeah.
Okay. And by normal, I mean one person reading it.
Yeah, it's not normal beyond that. One person narrating.
Right. And then Randy, another one of your books, The Complete and Unedited Biography and Memoir of the Amazing Life and Times of Randy S. Another found book.
Yeah, yet another found book.
You just love creating these, kind of the world that you create with kind of discovering these things and then it must offer you, do you feel it offers you an even a extra layer of freedom in terms of everything you can do or say or
Yeah, totally. And I think it frees me up. It's like playing a character or acting on stage as someone else. And each of these found objects are written by different types of people. I mean, this one in particular was supposedly a self-published memoir that I found at a garage sale. And it features a 30-something from Maryland area where I grew up. And it's just a certain type of person that I used to know, especially working retail. Premise is he comes into a lot of money and creates out of his grandmother's farm a suburban development where he lives at the top of the hill in a townhome and becomes the president of the association and hires someone, he becomes an arts patron, and he hires someone to write about his life, but in very flowery prose. You can tell it's all bullshit. So it's a very mediocre guy being written about in a very majestic way.
Very cool. He had a Let's Do This mug. I noticed Stinker had a shit-kicking mug. I was starting to think you got an Etsy store that you can start to build around this.
It's not a bad idea. But I used to love those mugs. I mean, pre-internet, you took your comedy where you could get them. And a lot of times they were the coffee mugs you see at your friend's parents' house.
Exactly. Randy was cool, though. I like the Randy isms. Ain't no cool way to eat a popsicle. A lot of good stuff.
Yeah, he's no genius, this guy, but hopefully he's likable.
So, and then you did a couple amazing interview books, comedy interview books. These were some of your first books. And Here's the Kicker and Poking a Dead Frog.
Right. I don't think it was the first book. I think it was the third book was And Here's the Kicker, where I interviewed comedy writers. A lot of reviews said I interviewed comedians. That's not true. It was really just comedy writers. And the purpose really was just sort of selfish. I just wanted to pick their brains to see what worked for them, those who were successful. And also quite a few of them were dying off. So this was 2007 or so, 2008. And a lot of the original radio comedy writers, TV writers were passing away. So I wanted to get out some who I knew wouldn't be around that long, such as Irv Brecker, who wrote for the Marx Brothers, or Peg Lynch, who was in her mid-90s and wrote for radio comedies. And Larry Gelbart, who wrote for Bob Hope and Your Show of Shows. And I just wanted to just sort of bridge that gap between, to another time when comedy writing was totally different. You didn't go to college for it. It was very much a street hustle. A lot of them had been in the military. I wanted to ask them about their careers. That just didn't exist anymore. But they had, all of them had great advice for younger writers across the board. So it was a thrill, really. And some of the younger writers, like Harold Ramis, passed away not long after I interviewed him. So I just feel fortunate that I got to interview these writers whose work meant a lot to me when I was growing up.
A lot of these names mean a lot to a lot of people. Robert Smigel, Buck Henry, Al Jaffe. You mentioned Harold Ramis. Just so many. Bob Odenkirk, Paul Feig. And then in the other book, Mel Brooks, Amy Poehler, Patton Oswalt. Was there any particular advice, say, from Mel Brooks that stood out?
I don't remember specifically about Mel Brooks. Well, speaking of dentists, I spoke to him multiple times. But one time I was talking to him, he was in his car coming back from the dentist. I mean, how Jewish is that, across the board, it was the same advice. And that's basically don't get into it for the money, remain true to your convictions, and never stop. Just keep moving forward. And that pretty much, doesn't even matter what generation a writer comes from, but that's pretty consistent across the board. Write what you find funny, not what you think producers or editors or agents would find funny, and just never stop, never give up. Because there'll be highs and there'll be lows. But if you keep moving forward, good things tend to happen. So that was pretty much the overall overarching advice from all the writers.
Any plans on doing a third round of interviews? It's impressive. It's impressive you get so many big names. That in itself is so cool.
Yeah, but this is before it became a thing, before there was a million podcasts and a million books about comedy. I mean, when I did my first book in 2007, there was very, very little written about comedy beyond maybe the AV Club, Onion AV Club. There's no podcast. So it was easier for me to get interviews. Now I don't think I would find it easy. I really don't. especially for this type of interview, which is not a short interview. It's a long form interview. Some of these interviews would take weeks, not months, of repeated interviews to get, it's more like a Playboy interview than something you would see online or a Paris Review interview. So I don't know if people, especially younger writers now, would have the patience or the gumption for it. A lot of PR people don't even like setting up their clients for it, because unless the client is publicizing something that's current, they don't really see any benefit to it. So I don't know. I was thinking of perhaps doing a new book of young writers coming up now who came up in a different era than, Mel Brooks, Larry Gelbart, where you didn't have to come out of, your show of shows or the Harvard Lampoon later on. You can now create comedy from anywhere. You can be anyone, which I think is an amazing thing for comedy. So I was thinking of attacking it from that angle, but there's been nothing definitive as far as pitching this book. It's just a lot of work. I mean, it's a solid year of pure interview, and it's just truthfully a bit exhausting.
I can imagine. It's a lot. I'm sure just them working in the time. Was there any piece of advice that you got that changed the way you did things or approached things?
Well, one piece of advice that I forgot who gave it to me was that one medium is no more important than the next. And a lot of people feel they must write for TV or they have to write for the New Yorker. But really, if you can write what you want, how you want, and get it out within any medium, one is no less deserving than the next. And I think that's really good advice for young students, that you can create something funny and something artful within any realm, whether it's a one-person show or a short film or an audio project. It doesn't have to be for a major studio. It doesn't have to be for a major publisher. So there's sort of a punk aesthetic to it where anyone can do it, rather than circling the drain for a number of years, pitching the same ideas. What's more important is just to keep moving forward and never stop and not to stagnate. And, as I was saying a little bit before, good things do tend to happen when you put out work that you are happy with. It really doesn't matter what medium it is. People will tend to find it.
That's great advice. When you approach these novelizations, what's your writing process? Like with a stinker, do you have the various movies? You kind of like, how do you lay all that out? How do you kind of create, what's your process of kind of creating these worlds?
Well, that's really just watching a ton of movies from a certain era, just sort of digesting the language and the culture of that time. I mean, you look at some of these movies now. I hadn't seen Smokey and the Bandit in a long time. I mean, it's like something from out of space now. It's just so bizarre. It's such a different world. So I try to just sink into that world by watching that movie and other movies and reading novelizations from that era, and then just sort of spitting it out and just going. There's no outlining. It's just going where you think the story needs to go. Sometimes when you outline, if you know where the story is going, sometimes the reader will know. But if you don't know where the story is going as you're writing it, the reader may not know either. I mean, for better or for worse. So more surprises I've found tend to happen if you just do that. And for a project like this, it doesn't have to have a traditional 3-act structure. You're not trying to appeal to any professor or to any producer. It can be very, very surreal and very freewheeling. So for each of these movies that I did, John Hughes or the Generation X slacker movies, it's just inundating myself with movies from that time and taking notes as to the way people talk, dressed, and what was going on in the background. And by doing that too, you can sort of not only parody these movies, but you can satirize America at the time and also America now, how America has changed or not changed. And each of these time periods are very specific to America, whether it's the late 70s, Jimmy Carter, Southern pop culture, dealing with gas increases and shortages, or whether it's John Hughes, the Ronald Reagan years, or whether it's the Clinton slacker years in the 90s. There's a lot that can be sort of done with satirizing America back then and America now. So it's sort of almost like a Trojan horse in a sense that it's just a process, something to use, a MacGuffin to sort of get jokes and ideas across.
Do you write every day?
Yeah, I do. I think it's important to do that. And I don't necessarily think you have to write every day, but I think you have to do something that achieves something related to writing, whether it's research or networking or just even taking walks and thinking about something. I see no reason why you have to take a day off from that. I mean, if you're going to avoid writing maybe you shouldn't be a writer. It's hard for everyone, but I do think that it's so hard. And you see the people who are very successful, like David Sedaris. He writes every single day. You just see how hard these writers work, have worked, and still work. And I think it's really something that needs a lot of time. And I think as long as you accomplish something each day, it's a good thing. But what I found is writers will take a day off, and before you know it, it's a few weeks. And I don't think that's good. I think it's like any instrument. You have to sort of practice it every day and keep your tools sharp. But I write every day or research or network only because, I feel it's necessary, but also because of OCD and depression and anxiety. This alleviates that for me. I think I'm lucky in that sense. So if I don't accomplish something every day, I get very depressed and anxious. So it's sort of like medical for me, that, and exercising as well. So those two things I try to do every day. Otherwise, I'm a bit of a mess.
So how do you handle like writer's block, or do you just kind of, how do you work through that kind of stuff?
Well, I think writer's block, Larry Gelbart had a great quote that said, your writing style becomes what you can't write. So there was a lot of things he couldn't write, but he could write comedy in his own voice. And that became his style. I think if you're suffering from writer's block, that may not be the type of writing that will benefit you. I just wrote a piece, a nonfiction piece for New Yorker, and it took 3 weeks, and it was torture. And I don't think that's the type of piece I want to write again. I don't think it came out well. It wasn't fun for me. I do think that if it comes out well, if it's fun to write, somewhat fun to write, that's really what you should concentrate on. If something is hitting a dead end, there might be a reason for that. Either you're trying to write in a style that doesn't suit you, or it's just not a good fit. So your job as a writer is to then find a good fit and come at it from an angle that might work, or just say, you know what, this isn't for me, and you move on to something else.
Great advice. Oh, tell me, you had another book, Passing on the Right, which is about a comedian turned shock jock podcaster. Let's talk about that, and then we can pivot naturally to your podcast.
Yeah, that was based on people I grew up with in D.C., the Judge Kavanaugh type. I went to public school, and we used to have a thing with private school kids where we would look down on them, they would look down on us. When the Judge Kavanaugh hearings took place, that party that he allegedly, although I do believe he did, raped poor woman, that was a few miles from where I grew up. And I knew people like that, and very, they grew up with money and bit entitled. And that's what I sort of wanted to take down, was that type of person, like a Kavanaugh, who it's a very DC character. But I also wanted to take down those comedians who became conservative, whether they believe it or not, whether it's just a conscious choice to become more popular, more successful, or whether just something in my mind goes wrong with them, like Dennis Miller or any of these types. I just, I'm fascinated by that. Someone who starts off relatively normal and then maybe has some career trouble and then blames it on, an ethnicity or a religion or sexuality. So I wanted to create this very mediocre comedic mind who comes from money and just sort of gets through life and turns to conservative humor because it is a good career move. So that was that character.
And then how does that relate to the character of you doing your own podcast? No, again.
Hopefully not at all.
No, hopefully not at all. So, Doing It with Mike Sachs. Great name for a podcast. Fabulous.
Thank you.
Very enjoyable podcast. What led you to the world of audio entertainment?
I think there's a lot. I love audio. And there's a lot that can be done with it that can't be done for print. So if there's an idea I have that is more applicable to audio, it's fun to put together. I grew up listening to old National Lampoon records or Gene Shepard records or Bob and Ray records. And I just think a lot can be done with audio comedy. And it's just another medium to work within that I don't have to answer to anyone. I can put up whatever I want. But I wanted it to be a combination of bits, comedic bits, and also interviews. I interviewed, Gordon Lightfoot passed away, Canadian singer, and I interviewed him for the podcast. It's just an opportunity, too, for me to reach out to these people I love. Bill Hader, Jody Hill. All these people that I just need an excuse to talk to and to pick their brain about comedy. And it's sort of like the poking the dead frog, or and here's the kicker, in that I really am sort of aiming it at those people who are at home who aren't in the business and want to get in the business but don't know how to do it like I was. If there's any overarching theme, it's that you can do it, that you can go from point A to point B, but there are certain things you have to do and certain things you shouldn't do. And hopefully these interviews help writers, whether you're young or just struggling or even later in life, just always wanting to get in comedy but not knowing how. So it's really for that type of outsider, I think. And also, it's also for the comedy geek. I mean, just to be able to ask these people questions that I have about their shows and books and their process is just really fun.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about podcasting is the people that will talk to me that probably normally wouldn't have, right? And being able to kind of dive into their lives for a short period of time.
Well, I think that's something I tell young writers too. Don't reach out to people and ask for if they can help you get your resume across or for advice. The best way to do it is to play to their ego and interview them. And by doing that, they'll get to know you and you'll get to know them. And you'll also learn in the process. And it really doesn't even matter who you're doing it for, whether it's a podcast or your own website. I think that's a very easy in for young writers. And I would recommend that over asking for career help or advice.
Excellent advice. There you go. Mike, it was so fun hanging out with you. It was fun diving into all your books and all that kind of great stuff. You've done so many amazing things. Where can people keep up with you on the website and the socials?
Michael B. Sachs on Twitter, mikesachs.com, and there's also the Wikipedia page. But anyway, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, really, I do feel very lucky. I don't feel like I was God-given to achieve anything. And I struggled for a long time and just sort of fell into it. I mean, I could very easily, I did so poorly in school. One of the professors said, maybe you should go into your dad's business. And I said, well, he's a dentist. That's not going to happen. But I could have easily seen myself selling dental supplies or continuing to work in retail. So just the fact that people are nice enough like yourself to ask questions and want to interview me means a lot.
Well, it means a lot to me that you'll come on my show. So thank you very much. It's an honor. And just for the record, you probably would have made a mint selling dental supplies.
I think I would have been good. I really do. I think I would have been a real hustler.
All right. How amazing with Mike Sachs. I know. He's written so much great stuff. Check out Stinker Lets Loose, Passable and Pink, Slouchers, Poking a Dead Frog. So many great books to check out. I'll put links in the show notes. All the Mike Sachs in the world that you want at your fingertips. All right. Well, with the interview over, I know it can only mean one thing. Another episode has come to an end. One more huge thanks to Mike Sachs. Another huge thanks to all of you for coming back week after week. It means the world to me. And I'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Classic Conversations. If you like what you heard, don't be shy and give us a follow on your favorite podcast app. Also, why not go ahead and tell all your friends about the show? You strike us as the kind of person that people listen to. Thanks in advance for spreading the word, and we'll catch you next time on Classic Conversations.